London, June 18, 1982. 4:30 a.m. A thin fog swirls over the Thames. It clings to the stone pillars of Blackfriars Bridge. The town is half awake. The river is silent, save the slow churn of the tide against concrete. A postal clerk initiates his route early. He notices something under the first arch, something that shouldn't be there in the pre-dawn stillness. The body, hanging from ropes among scaffolding underneath the bridge. A man in a neatly pressed gray suit, well-polished Italian shoes, a wristwatch that still ticks. 5 bricks fill his pockets. A rope circles his neck. A thick briefcase hangs from his wrist. The scene looks peaceful, almost staged. City of London police arrive. The identity is immediate. Roberto Calvi, chairman of Banco Ambrosiano, once the pride of Italy's most powerful private banks. The world will learn the truth in the weeks ahead. His death is not a tragedy. It is a signal, the point of termination of a network reaching into the Vatican Bank, the P2 Masonic Lodge, Italian intelligence agencies, South American dictatorships, and the Mafia Siciliana. Calvi enjoyed many titles, but only one mattered above all: God's banker. His death under Blackfriars Bridge was not suicide. It was a warning. Banco Ambrosiano was established in 1896, a Catholic bank, built on moral purpose. For years, it remained diminutive, conservative, steady, financing Catholic businesses, supporting charities, honest, predictable. But in the 1960s, Italy changed. Rapid economic growth, deepening corruption. Organized crime is moving into institutions. Cold War tensions mounted. Into this world stepped Roberto Calvi. He entered the bank as a junior employee in the early 1940s. Disciplined, intelligent, quietly ambitious. He came up through the ranks: branch manager, regional supervisor, head of foreign operations. Calvi pushed boundaries. He saw banking as power. He knew the new money world: offshore companies, international transfers, currency arbitrage, secrecy. He was chairman by 1975. His mission: to transform a humble Catholic bank into an international financial powerhouse. He would not do it alone. In the 1970s, Italy faced terrorism, political violence, and Cold War infiltration. Amidst all this chaos, one organization grew in the dark: Propaganda du P2, led by Licio Gelli, a former fascist militant, an intelligence collaborator, a fixer, an arms broker. Its members included cabinet ministers, generals, police chiefs, bankers, foreign intelligence contacts, media executives, mafia intermediaries. Their objective: democratic reorganization, a term masking authoritarian ambition. Gelli had the media. He wanted money. He needed a banker. He chose Calvi. Along with this, another institution was watching: the Vatican Bank, under the helm of Chicago Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, a forceful, direct man. Marcinkus required secret channels of finance. Calvi needed Vatican legitimacy. Their partnership delivered on both. The Vatican washed money through Ambrosiano. Ambrosiano used Vatican immunity to avoid regulation. Money poured in: sacred cash, political money, criminal money. And more eyes turned toward Calvi. By the late 1970s, the Sicilian Mafia dominated the world heroin trade. Billions in cash demanded laundering. They needed overseas accounts, friendly banks, invisible transfers, loyal intermediaries. It was all provided by Calvi. Through Ambrosiano's Bahamian and South American branches, he moved Mafia profits disguised as developmental loans, currency trades, shell company investments, religious charity funds. The money was untouchable, with the shadow of the Vatican behind it. But Mafia loyalty extends only as long as reliability does. And Calvi's system was starting to break. Between 1975 and 1981, Calvi had built up a maze of offshore companies, paper entities, no offices, no employees, no assets. He used them to cover losses, inflate Ambrosiano's balance sheet, loan money to shell firms he controlled, fund politics, launder criminal proceeds. But complexity cannot conceal insolvency. In 1978, the Bank of Italy investigated. The findings were devastating. Illegal foreign exchange operations, unauthorized borrowing, sham guarantees, false accounting. Calvi was indicted. In 1981, he was found guilty. 4 years in prison. But powerful allies intervened. P2 pressured. The Vatican insisted. Politicians maneuvered. He avoided prison during appeal, but his image shattered. And the Mafia grew restless. They had entrusted him with millions. If he fell, so figuratively speaking, did their fortunes. Desperate, Calvi expanded deeper into Latin America. The branches in Nicaragua, Peru, Argentina, and Uruguay issued huge loans to companies he controlled. Most of the money vanished into political slush funds, intelligence operations, arms deals, laundering chains, Mafia investments. His strategy became straightforward. Borrow more to fill the last hole. Need a new shell to overlay the old one. Delay collapse. Just a little longer. But the collapse came anyway. By early 1982, Banco Ambrosiano was dying. Calvi ran to the Vatican Bank. He begged Marcinkus for guarantees covering $1.3 billion in debts. The Vatican hesitated. Support meant exposure. Refusal spelled collapse. In June of 1982, Marcinkus refused. Calvi panicked. He told colleagues, "Without support, I am finished." And many others with me. He fled Italy 8 days later. His death was inevitable. In the late 1970s, Roberto Calvi built up something no other banker in Europe controlled. A shadow financial pipeline that stretched from the Vatican itself straight into the global black market economy. It was powered by 2 institutions. Banco Ambrosiano was Italy's second largest private bank, and the Vatican Bank, the IOR, a sovereign financial entity that has no requirements of transparency, no audits, and full legal immunity inside the Holy See. Together, they controlled an individual machine capable of crossing borders with millions without a trace. It wasn't brilliance that was Calvi's strength. It was access. The Vatican Bank could transfer money anywhere under diplomatic protection. Ambrosiano could mask those transfers within a maze of offshore subsidiaries. It became the perfect system for the Italian Mafia, corrupt politicians, South American dictators, Vatican officials running covert operations, businessmen seeking invisible fortunes. To the outside world, Ambrosiano appeared as a conservative Catholic institution. Inside, it was something entirely different, a sophisticated washing machine for dirty money. Calvi wasn't laundering cash. He was laundering power. But this machine came with a price. Absolute loyalty, total secrecy, and perfect balance were demanded of everyone involved. Calvi could not afford one mistake. He was about to break several. Banks had long been avoided by the Sicilian Mafia, until Calvi. In the mid-1970s, 2 of Italy's most feared crime groups, the Corleonesi and the Sacra Corona Unita, were struggling to move their enormous heroin profits. Italy's government was cracking down. U.S. intelligence was tracking the money from drugs. Traditional laundering routes were collapsing. Then the Mafia found Calvi. At first, they had used Ambrosiano's offshore subsidiaries simply to launder profits. But then Calvi saw something more. He needed capital to expand overseas, to London, Peru, Luxembourg, and Nassau. Secrecy, speed, and plausible deniability. all the hallmarks of Mafia activities. A partnership forged in darkness it became. Calvi began receiving suitcases of cash, large wire transfers, deposits masquerading as international investments. He pushed the money through Panama, Luxembourg, the Bahamas, and through shell companies with names like Manic S.A. and United Trading Corporation. The Mafia adored him, but it also belonged to them, because the moment when a banker accepts Mafia money, he stops being a banker. He becomes an asset. Unbeknownst to Calvi, the noose around his neck had been tightening for years, long before he ever stepped under Blackfriars Bridge. At the center of Calvi's empire stood the IOR, the Vatican Bank. It was unique among the financial institutions of the world. It could not be investigated by the police. It could not be audited. It did not answer to any government. Its accounts were shielded by sovereign religious immunity. Its president was Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, a man unafraid of controversy. In the late 1970s, from Argentina to Chile, Paraguay, and Uruguay, repressive dictatorships were carrying out torture, disappearances, and political assassinations. They needed money, money that couldn't be traced. Ambrosiano's subsidiaries provided just that: sham companies, empty invoices, anonymous wire channels, discreet access to global markets. Through his network, hundreds of millions were passed by Argentina alone. Calvi assured his associates he was doing God's work, but anybody who cared to look knew better. Torture chambers, death squads, disappearing civilians, all funded indirectly through Vatican-backed financial operations. The irony was grotesque. A Catholic bank was underwriting military regimes that murdered Catholic priests, and that contradiction would eventually destroy Calvi. By 1980, Banco Ambrosiano had ceased to be an operating bank. By then, it had become a huge pyramid built on offshore loans, fraudulent credits, and paper companies with no real assets. The balance sheets were fiction. The Vatican knew it. The Mafia knew this. Calvi knew that. But investors didn't. What Calvi needed was time. Time he no longer had. Desperate, he made a choice to buy it. He borrowed more Mafia money, millions in cash, and used it to plug the holes in Ambrosiano's accounts. Repayment was expected by the Mafia. When it didn't come, they requested explanations. Calvi promised to repair everything, but the math was impossible. Ambrosiano was hemorrhaging cash far faster than he could cover up. The Italian treasury began asking questions. Regulators demanded documents. Then the journalists started circling. The Vatican backed off. The Mafia grew restless. Calvi was running out of lies and out of time. In June 1981, a package turned up at Calvi's London office. Inside was a bullet, a Catholic rosary, and a note that read, "You know what this means." Calvi grasped the situation instantly. This was not a threat. It was a countdown. The Mafia has a simple tradition. First comes the warning. Then comes the punishment. He knew he had weeks, maybe months, before someone came collecting in the only currency the Mafia values: blood. He increased security around his home, hired private guards, additional surveillance, but he didn't stop. He kept transferring money, continued fabricating loans, kept digging deeper. The bullet wasn't just a warning. It was a prophecy. The Vatican made its decision as losses mounted to $1.3 billion at Ambrosiano. Calvi would be abandoned. The man who had served them for a decade was now a liability. Marcinkus, who once toasted champagne with Calvi on Vatican rooftops, stopped answering his calls. Vatican lawyers drafted denials. Internal memos ordered staff to distance the IOR from everything connected with Ambrosiano. Panicking, Calvi sent message after message pleading for assistance. None came. He once thought the Vatican would protect him. But in Rome, even God's banker isn't safe from politics. On June 2, 1981, Italian police came to Calvi's home. He was arrested for illegal currency export, a delicate way of saying massive financial fraud. Calvi insisted he was innocent, that he had followed Vatican instructions. He felt he was being used as a scapegoat. The Mafia knew he was there. He was sentenced to 4 years imprisonment. The Mafia was furious. They believed that Calvi's arrest risked billions of their buried treasure. Some were for his immediate execution. Others insisted he must be kept alive long enough to recover the lost money. At least they agreed on one thing: watch him closely. If he ever threatened to talk, eliminate him. Inside Regina Coeli prison, Calvi began writing letters. Letters to his wife, his lawyers, officials of the Vatican, and the letters that terrorized the Mafia. One contained a line that sealed his fate: "If I am abandoned, I will reveal everything." Another read, "I know too much. If I talk, many powerful people will fall." These letters leaked to Italian authorities. Rumors spread that Calvi was preparing to cooperate in investigations. Decision was made by the Mafia. Calvi would never leave prison alive unless someone helped him escape. Someone did. On July 10, 1981, Calvi was granted temporary release pending appeal. He walked out of prison with a single suitcase, pale, thin, trembling. To friends he said he felt like a dead man walking. A few days later, he fled Italy using a false passport. Mysterious intermediaries smuggled him across the Austrian border and onto a flight to London. The Mafia knew he was there. The Vatican knew. Suspected MI6. Italian intelligence watched silently. Using a false name, Calvi checked into a small London hotel. He believed he could negotiate his way out. He believed he could yet survive. He did not know that his life would end on the bridge, standing 30 minutes away from his hotel room. When Roberto Calvi arrived in London on June 10, 1982, he wasn't a fugitive in the traditional sense. He had no weapons, no bodyguards, no plan. He checked into room 881 at the Chelsea Cloisters, a modest apartment complex in Kensington. His fake passport identified him as Peter Kolb, but London wasn't a refuge. It was a waiting room. Calvi spent his last week pacing between 3 locations: his hotel room, a nearby pub, and the offices of 2 mysterious businessmen tied to South American finance. He looked tired, paranoid, and disoriented. Hotel staff later recalled how he jumped at loud noises and checked every hallway before walking through. He had reason to be afraid. His bank had collapsed. The Vatican had abandoned him. P2 denied ever knowing him. And the Mafia wanted repayment, nearly $1.3 billion that Calvi couldn't produce. Each day in London felt like borrowed time. While Calvi walked the streets of London, 1,200 miles away, in the hills outside Palermo, Sicily, a meeting was underway. According to later Mafia informants, senior members of the Corleonesi faction were deciding Calvi's fate. To them, Banco Ambrosiano wasn't just a bank. It was an artery moving the profits of the global heroin trade. His collapse meant frozen accounts, blocked transfers, police investigations, money trails in every ledger he'd ever touched, and most of all, the Mafia's cash flow had been severed. The decision was easy. Calvi had to be silenced. No debate, no dissent. Just one question: where? The murder had to send a message to future bankers, politicians, Vatican officials, and anyone foolish enough to think they could steal from the Mafia. Italy? Too obvious. South America? Too far. London? Perfect. Blackfriars Bridge carried symbolic weight, its name echoing the Blackfriars of P2. The order was issued. London would be the grave. While the Mafia wanted silence, P2 wanted control. Licio Gelli, the Grand Master of P2, understood the risk. Calvi possessed documents, thousands of them connecting. Italian politicians, intelligence agencies, Vatican accounts, South American juntas, and Cold War funding operations. If Calvi talked, the entire P2 structure could collapse. It wasn't just exposure they feared. It was extinction. Gelli wrote in his diary around this time, "The Italian problem must be resolved abroad." What those words meant has been debated for decades. To Calvi, it meant one thing: no one in Italy would save him. Meanwhile, in the Apostolic Palace, the Vatican held a private meeting. The topic wasn't theology. It was survival. Internal memos uncovered years later show Vatican officials discussing strategies for minimizing reputational damage tied to Ambrosiano's collapse. The Vatican Bank had guaranteed $250 million in Ambrosiano loans. If forced to pay, it would face its worst financial crisis since the 1800s. Calvi wrote one last desperate letter to Pope John Paul II. "If I die, all will come out. You must protect me." There was no reply. No lawyers came. No money. No message. Only silence. And for Calvi, silence meant death. On June 16, 1982, Calvi left his hotel for the last time. He withdrew his remaining cash, about £10,000, and walked across London Bridge toward the Thames path. Witnesses later recalled him, pale, trembling, mumbling to himself, constantly glancing behind. He believed he was meeting someone who could save him. Who that was, we may never know. But what we do know is this: Calvi never returned to the hotel. For the next 48 hours, he disappeared. Those 2 days remain one of Europe's great unsolved mysteries. But evidence suggests he was taken to a safe house, interrogated, and judged. In the early hours of June 18, 1982, beneath the iron structure of Blackfriars Bridge, 3 or 4 men carried Roberto Calvi to a hidden scaffolding platform. They worked efficiently, quietly, no struggle, no witnesses. Bricks were placed in Calvi's pockets, possibly a symbol of the Blackfriars of P2. His tie was looped through an orange construction rope. His hands weren't tied. His body showed no signs of a fight. He was still alive when they lowered him. The rope tightened. His legs kicked weakly, then stopped. It was over in 3 minutes. They left him dangling above the Thames, like a marionette with its strings cut. Hours later, London police found the body. Days later, they ruled it a suicide. The speed of that conclusion shocked many. Despite cash in 3 currencies, bricks in his pockets, no suicide note, no signs of depression, no fingerprints on the scaffolding, no logical way for a 62-year-old man to access the underside of the bridge, and Calvi's known fear of assassination. Police called it self-inflicted. Italy protested. Journalists mocked the idea. Forensic experts raised red flags. But the official record stayed the same. Why? Because to admit murder was to admit the Mafia's reach, the Vatican's involvement, P2's shadowy operations, the depth of financial corruption, the failure of Italian oversight, and the complicity of European politics. Suicide was easier. Truth was dangerous. In 1991, 10 years later, Italian prosecutors reopened the case. A new forensic analysis was ordered. This time, experts examined bone fractures, rope marks, fibers, dust, algae levels, and the geometry of the bridge. The result: Calvi did not and could not have killed himself. His neck showed trauma inconsistent with suicide. The rope suggested he had been lifted, not dropped. His shoes had no trace of bridge dust. No metal residue on his hands. His clothing had been manipulated after death. The conclusion: Roberto Calvi was murdered. Italian courts ruled it a homicide by unknown persons. The suicide story was dead. 4 theories emerged. 1. The Mafia, the most widely accepted. Calvi lost their money. He broke silence without permission. His death was a warning to others. It matched the symbolism, timing, and method. 2. P2 Lodge Calvi knew too much. His murder protected politicians, generals, spies, and the lodge. The Blackfriars location pointed directly to P2's nickname. 3. The Vatican, not necessarily the church itself, but individuals protecting Vatican finances. Calvi's death averted a full-scale scandal. The Vatican later paid $250 million in moral compensation. 4. Intelligence agencies, unproven but floated by some. Calvi held information connecting Western intelligence to South American regimes. Silencing him may have protected several governments, which is correct. No court has ever proven it. But all four share one truth. Calvi's death protected the powerful. He left behind a collapsed bank, billions in missing funds, political upheaval, dead witnesses, ruined careers, and decades of unanswered questions. His death reshaped European finance. After Calvi, the Vatican restructured its banking. Italy tightened financial laws. The Mafia adapted. P2 was dissolved. Global banking rules changed, and London police faced international scrutiny. But Calvi's greatest legacy is this. One man stood at the crossroads of the Vatican: organized crime, Cold War politics, and financial secrecy. When he fell, the shadows lifted. The world saw, for the first time, how dictators laundered money, how the Vatican moved funds in secret, how Catholic banks became tools of the Mafia, how secret societies influenced governments, how intelligence agencies used hidden accounts, and how corruption thrived inside institutions meant to uphold morality. Calvi wasn't a hero. He wasn't a martyr. He was an ambitious banker who believed he could serve the Vatican, the Mafia, and a secret society and profit from all three. He thought he was untouchable. But those he served lived by a rule. Anyone who knows too much must never live long enough to speak. Blackfriars Bridge still stands. Thousands cross it daily. Few know the story of the man who hung beneath it. Bricks in his pockets, secrets in his mind, and the world's most powerful forces watching as he drew his final breath. The river took nothing away. The truth remained suspended just beneath the surface, visible only to those who dare to look. His murder wasn't the end of the conspiracy. It was the moment it stepped into the light.